So we are now on question number 5 of the 2025 FRQs. Go ahead and pause the video and read the question and look at the figure associated with it. All right, so we are asked to describe a characteristic of an enzyme's active site. Now, this means since they're only asking for one characteristic, you should only put one characteristic down, because if you put more than one, they're only going to grade the first one. And if you do end up getting a little overexcited and end up writing more than one, make sure you always go with your most certain answer first. So what's a characteristic of the active site that lets it catalyze a specific chemical reaction? Well, you can say something along the lines of the physical shape of the active site matches the physical shape of the substrate. There are other options you can put. You can say that there's a lock and key style fit between the active site and the substrate. You can say that you can describe the induced fit model, where when the substrate binds to the active site, the binding is going to change the shape of the substrate to stress bonds to make the chemical reaction easier to happen. You could even say something along the lines of not only the physical shape of the active site, you could describe the fact that the electrical properties of the active site, like the polarity, could match. Anything that indicates that the active site will match with the substrate. So if we look at the scoring guide, here are some of the example responses that earned points. The active site binds to a specific substrate. You could have just said that. You could say the shape or charge of the active site is compatible with the specific substrate or amino acid. A reminder, parentheses are optional things that help improve the understanding but aren't necessarily required to earn the point. And these slashes are going to give you alternate phrasings or alternate words. Then you could also say the active site positions the substrate or amino acid in a way that makes the reaction more likely. Or like I said, you could talk about the induced fit model, where the binding of the substrate to the active site stresses bonds so that the reaction is more likely to happen. Any of those are possible correct answers. Another note, remember, this is another one of the short questions, so it's only supposed to take 10 minutes to answer. Go ahead and pause so that you can read Part B and try to answer Part B as well. All right, so hopefully you've restarted and hopefully you've attempted to answer this. So if we look, amino acid B does bind to enzyme 1, but does it bind at the active site? No. So we want to explain how it regulates the activity of enzyme 1. So you can say something along the lines of amino acid B binds to, and if you're remembering your fancy terms, you could remember the word allosteric site. Allo meaning different or other. Or you could also say a non-competitive binding site. It doesn't compete with the substrate. And also keep in mind this isn't explained, so going into more detail is not necessarily a bad thing. Of enzyme 1. And notice what happens to enzyme 1 when amino acid B binds. There is no longer an active site, so you can say amino acid B binds to the allosteric site of enzyme 1, which changes the active site. So the shape of the active site. To prevent binding of amino acid A thus, and sorry, thus is a word I use a lot, blocking or you could say, even better word, inhibiting the activity of enzyme 1. All right, so if we look at the scoring guide, we'll see your potential answers are amino acid B inhibits the binding of amino acid A to enzyme 1. Like I said, it binds to the allosteric site of enzyme 1 and prevents amino acid A from binding. You could say it causes the enzyme to change shape and prevents amino acid A from binding. So you're basically referring to the fact that this is an inhibitor and it's preventing amino acid A from binding to enzyme 1. All right, part C is a lot simpler. It's an identify, and what's even more astoundingly simple is that they give you 3 answer choices. So it's saying, what's the product of the reaction catalyzed by enzyme 2? So we're looking at this reaction right here. That is what is the product of enzyme 2? All you need to be able to do is read this diagram and see that it's intermediate Y. So your answer is intermediate Y. This is like the simplest FRQ question I have ever seen. Very easy. You just have to read the diagram. And so I believe I messed that up. This, I must have put it in the wrong spot when I deleted it. It literally says in the scoring guide, intermediate Y. So very easy. Oh, it looks like I went to the wrong direction. My bad. Okay, then go ahead and pause and read part D. All right, so we are explaining how a change in pH could affect enzyme 3 so that amino acid B cannot be produced. Well, this basically goes into the fact that changing the pH could change, you could say, the tertiary structure of enzyme 3 so that the active site won't bind, and we can look at what enzyme 3 acts on, won't bind intermediate Y. All right, let's look at the scoring guide. And the scoring guide says basically a change in pH could change the structure or the active site or the enzyme so that intermediate Y or the substrate cannot bind, or you could say it could denature enzyme 3 so that intermediate Y or the substrate cannot bind. Notice that not only is this an explain question, so you need to give more detail, but also on the AP test, they do not like you to just put the word denature. They want you to emphasize the fact that denaturing changes the structure, in this case, making it so that the intermediate Y, the substrate, can't bind anymore. All right. That is question number 5. Honestly, if I was going through the AP test, you need to make sure you read every single question because this would be one of the easier questions and the faster questions to earn points on. So don't just do the questions in order. Another thing is a lot of people will do the questions in numerical order, so they'll spend forever on question 1 and 2, maybe get to question 3 and 4, and then not get to question 5 and 6 and end up missing points. But if you can get more points than other students, then you can get a higher score. So make sure you at least get a chance to read questions 5 and 6 so you can get any easy points from them that you can.